Thanks, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present to you on behalf of WESSA, the Wildlife and Environmental Society of South Africa. I am the General Manager for WESSA Education Centres, of which we operate 5 across the country. I am a member of the ExCo of WESSA, and I would like to share with you some insights today on what we have found over the last 6 to 8 months with COVID and the effects that it has had on our industry. So I have prepared a short presentation and I'll run through it as we go. I thought I'd break the presentation into challenges, what we have learned so far, some light at the end of the tunnel, and then currently what WESSA is doing in this space. And then I'll share a short video with you on an event that we've recently held. So if you can imagine, our education centres and our schools programs were closed from the start of lockdown at the end of March. And of course, it had a huge effect on our ability to do our work. I guess it's affected everybody really in the country, but it had a massive effect on my unit especially. And we obviously had a huge number of challenges that came out of that. So I'll just run through some of the challenges we've experienced. Science centres, education centres and outdoor program providers are under huge stress currently. There are many that have closed and there are many that are not quite sure what the future holds for them in this space. We are a member of SASTA, and under the SASTA banner of the Department of Science and Innovation, all 47 of those science centres had to close, and some of them are still not open. We're quite lucky in that we've managed to become operational again in the last 2 months, but 2 of our centres are still closed due to the fact that there's so many challenges within the space. When running of programs out in the field, you can imagine how difficult it is when you've got large groups to social distance, especially when you have the excitement of youth out in the field, whether it's in the mangroves or on the beach, or running a leadership or team building program or doing a cleanup. It's not easy to social distance, and sometimes social distancing does have an effect on your ability to deliver what you're trying to deliver in a program. The use of equipment and resources are something that is very difficult. If you imagine you're using a thermometer or you're using a rope or a canoe, the complexities of using these types of resources out in the field is enhanced greatly within the new rules and requirements of COVID-19. Just an example of when running a canoeing program out in the mangroves, you can't put 3 or 4 kids in a boat anymore. You can only put 2 in one Indian canoe, and so it has a large effect on the ability to teach large groups when using resources in the field. The extramural ban on government schools, which is still in place unfortunately, makes it very difficult for us to work with those youth and those teachers who are most in need of support. While we've been able to work with private schools already, government schools are not allowed to go on trips even now, and we're not quite sure at this point when that will be allowed. So it's difficult to work with these people, the people that are actually the most in need of our support out there. It's quite interesting. We're running a program called WESSA On Wheels at the moment, and we've been able to get into some communities. And we're finding that in these communities, the awareness about this virus and what this pandemic is also still very limited. Lack of wearing masks, lack of understanding as to why it's important to wear masks and to social distance. And it's quite interesting as a very privileged person who's able to read the media and watch television how up to date we are in that position. But when you're going into rural communities, still the awareness is so limited. Of course, corporate funding had a very big effect on NGOs and in our sector as much as all others. An example was our education centre up in the Northern Cape, where our funder had to change their focus to health and feeding schemes away from the work that we were doing up there. And that obviously had a big effect on our ability to keep the centre going. We're still not quite sure at this point what the future holds for the centre, and we are working with our funder into the future currently. We've also found that waste management in the communities is under immense pressure because obviously with the rules and with the new requirements, it's having a large effect on how to manage waste. And as I'm sure most people are aware on this webinar, there's a huge increase in PPE waste. We see it washing up on beaches, we see it going into rivers. But the problem is that because of rules, it's also difficult to manage that waste. And the lack of awareness is something that is quite concerning. We also, as I've just said, we're seeing a huge increase in COVID-19 PPE waste in the environment. And as a group that are working within the UNEP WASH campaign, this is something that we are having to deal with, but we certainly don't have the answers to how to deal with this properly, and it's only getting worse as we move forward. So yes, these are some of the challenges that we've been facing as a team running outdoor education. What about the light at the end of the COVID-19 tunnel? So here's some of the positives that we are experiencing at the moment. Our programs and our bookings for our units have increased far quicker than we expected. Initially, when we did our scenario planning in April, May, June, we expected that schools would not return until next year. I think there was a lot of concern in terms of how long lockdown would last, and also how long it would take before government would allow us to operate. But what we found is that the bookings have come back quickly, and that's for a number of reasons, which I'll deal with now. Principals and teachers have a real need for our support and the programs that our type of work involves. And not only from a curriculum point of view, but also from psychosocial support in the school environment. Currently, we are operating our EdTier WESSA On Wheels project, and we started this week, and we visited 3 or 4 schools so far in the last 2 days. And just discussions amongst the teachers and the pupils, amongst my WESSA staff, the questions that they're asking, and just the engagement with public, people coming from outside of the school has just been fantastic, and they're really crying out for just engaging and talking to people, not necessarily within a structured program. And if we can offer that support to these schools, if you imagine the teachers out there are under so much pressure, and if we can give support to the teachers in any small way, it will make a difference to them. For those teachers that are booking with us and coming to our centres, we're finding they want to use our programs and our locations as a platform for healing, not only for themselves, but for their students. Some of the activities that we've been doing have been far less structured than in the past, where literally they just want to go and lie in the water in the mangroves and put mud on their faces, or just walk along the beach for a couple of hours without having any talking or any worry about curriculum. And we're finding that the outdoors is creating that platform for them. Our engagements with public, with government, with communities has been very positive. I think people just want to see faces. They want to interact. This idea of being in lockdown was so foreign to us as a people, and the more and more you can interact with people out there, the better. There's also a reinvigorated interest in environmental stewardship. We're finding that in our conversations and in our engagements with funders, with government, and with schools and youth, that there's a lot of interest in people protecting the environment. I think that lockdown created that, and COVID, and all the outfall of that. And it's good news for our industry, where we want to protect the environment more. And we're finding that there's a lot of positive thought and people wanting to get more involved, a lot of people offering for volunteer opportunities and getting involved in events. So it's very positive in that respect. Corporate funding now is being directed towards environmental projects, and we can see it in many of the calls for funding. You will notice that there's a lot more focus on climate change, on renewable energies, on environmental education, and on wildlife and biodiversity economy, conservation included. Obviously, the impact of the lockdown and on COVID on the conservation industry was immense, and we're finding that there's a lot more money coming into that area, and also some quite interesting funding models that are coming out through it. WESSA is involved in several youth employment projects, and we're finding that over the last month we've had 4 advances from government to set up youth employment internship projects. There's a huge push within government to explore how to employ youth through EPWP or work learnership programs, and it's good news because we know that that's a huge issue right now within the country. But government are certainly putting a lot of effort and money into it. What about lessons that we've learned in being operational again? We're finding smaller groups are wanting to take part in our programs. Gone are the days where we could run 150 students on a beach cleanup or in a rocky shore, which we used to do. The groups are smaller, they're more intimate. Obviously, that helps in terms of the OSH and risk requirements, but at the same time, it means that we can get a lot more involved with one-on-one and small group education programs. So that certainly helps. We're also finding that not everybody wants programs to take place on their sites, whereas in the past you could book a local mangrove, or you could access some land. These days it's not as easy. I think people are still very risk averse to having groups on their locations, and that obviously negatively affects our ability to run certain programs. Within our offerings, because of what teachers and the community are asking for, we're having to be more targeted in what we're offering and what we're teaching. We cannot be as varied in our education programs, and we certainly have to look quite closely at how that relates to what they need at this point, specifically within the subject curriculum support. We have to be quite targeted in our approach. Teachers are under severe stress and they need a huge amount of support. I touched on this earlier. The OSH protocols are immense. If you can imagine, within my unit, we have a 76 megabyte document just for OSH. Teachers and parents want to see it, and you really do have to have your ducks in a row if you're going to attract any programs. Of course, they're there for a reason, but you do really have to engage and work out how to operate within these new protocols that are there. We're also finding that there's a huge amount of risk aversion amongst our stakeholders, from opening up of centres to being allowed to come on a program, to parents being quite nervous of allowing their students to come. The risk aversion is high. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the year, with the tragedy that happened at Parktown Boys, that started this process, and now obviously with COVID, has had a massive effect on us too. And all of the buzzwords out there on e-learning and how to do e-learning, and there are some fantastic platforms up there that allow it. But I have to admit that from our point of view and the way that we operate our programs, it would be very, very difficult for us to do e-learning to really have the impact and the outcomes that we want from our programs, especially when it's curriculum based, using e-learning as a platform. So it is with a huge amount of relief that we're able to operate in the field again with our programs. So what is WESSA doing at the moment in terms of our offerings? We have been able to get going with camps and hikes for private school groups. We are running our WESSA On Wheels programs, of which we have 3 currently that have been funded over the next year. So within this program, we go into the schools and into the communities, and we meet people on their own sites to run our programs. We've done a lot of waste education programs amongst communities and schools, from beach cleanups to river cleanups to presentations. It's been great to be able to go and create some awareness of the current waste issues out there, especially within the COVID and PPE space. We have been able to run our international programs, our eco schools, our Blue Flag, Leaf and YRE programs. The Blue Flag beaches have been opened again, and luckily the tourism season is back on track for this year. Within the eco school space, a lot of the focus that we've done is within COVID and school preparation and getting schools prepared with social distancing and with sanitation and being able to operate again. And we've assisted a lot within that space, working with the teachers and the principals. We've managed to have some specific events with some of the government and private partners. We've recently done a national marine awareness program with Department of Environment, Forestries and Fisheries. We've also worked with some private funders with beach cleanups, river cleanups. So at least the partners are coming back on board to do some outdoor events with us. We are doing online practical training within our training division, and it's going really well. I think that it certainly allows more space within the training sector, because it's accredited, to go online and to deliver it to youth that are all across the country. We have also started a recent feeding scheme. Unfortunately, many schools are falling through the cracks within the feeding scheme. Currently, about 2 million students not being fed still. And so we are linking our feeding scheme with our education and our awareness programs, and going into rural communities using the WESSA On Wheels program. And our local WESSA members have been able to continue with a lot of their local conservation initiatives, whether it's the Vulture Project up in Magaliesburg, whether it's beach cleanups, mangrove cleanups. Luckily, a lot of the local initiatives that WESSA do across the country have been able to be revived and get going. So I thought I'd share a video with you of a program that we recently did down on Treasure Beach. And this gives you an idea of the new normal and the way that we are operating a beach cleanup that we recently ran.
Hi everyone, my name is Nomfundo and I'm from the Wildlife and Environment Society of South Africa. So we are here on this beautiful Saturday for the International Coastal Cleanup to say no to plastic pollution and yes to cleaner oceans. And we'd also like to thank Johnson's Workwear, who have made this event possible for us with their generous sponsorship. We'd also like to encourage more people to take part in this great initiative to help save our oceans.
Thank you everybody for your time and for listening into my presentation. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matthew. It's great to hear all the things that WESSA On Wheels is up to and the perspective of education during COVID. I'm going to hand over to Martin now.
Good afternoon all, and thank you for allowing me to present this afternoon. My name is Martin Roediger. I'm going to be representing Scouts South Africa, and my position there is the National Growth Coordinator. So what is Scouts, and where do we come from, and what did we do during COVID lockdown times? Scouts South Africa is an NGO, and that was established in 1908 and is affiliated to the World Organization of the Scout movement, and it was founded by Robert Baden-Powell. It's Lord Robert Baden-Powell. So Scout South Africa contributes to the education of young people through its value system based on the Scout promise and law, and strives to build a better world where people are confident and self-fulfilled as individuals. Members have strong leadership abilities and play a constructive role in society. So I always like to say Scout South Africa builds our future leaders through an education and a value system. So what does that mean? Scout South Africa has currently got approximately 190,000 members, and that's both boys and girls, with approximately 8,600 adult volunteers. So how does Scouts work? It empowers its members through experimental learning. So it's learning by doing. The kids get actively involved. They use their hands. They outdoors. They hands-on. We run age-appropriate programs. So we have 4 sections that we split up into. So we've got meerkats, cubs, scouts, and rovers. And each one of those sections will run different programs which are age-appropriate. We do outdoor adventures, which could be camping, hiking, pioneering. And then we also have a range of challenges that address the current societal needs and developments. What does that do for the youth? Well, in short, the children learn from positive examples. They look at how they're being taught and who they're being taught by, who their role models are. And in turn, they inspire their peers. So fellow kids at school could say, oh, where did you learn that? No, I'm a cub. Can I come along? Absolutely. So we inspire the peers of the current members. They learn to value their self-worth, build self-confidence, and make positive life choices. So you can see where this is going. This is all teaching the kids to stand up for themselves. And I say kids, it's youth and young adults, and actually building a leadership for the country. They gain knowledge and adopt their behaviors to protect and conserve our environment, biodiversity, and undertake to combat climate change. So we've often had feedback from schools, and schools say to us, wow, the child's performing so much better. They were withdrawn, introvert, what happened? Turns out that they've been involved in the Scout movement. So we always say that the kids that are involved in Scouts or the Scouting environment do better at school and contribute to initiatives that address their needs of their communities. So where are we during lockdown? What did we do? Unfortunately, during lockdown, we couldn't do any face-to-face meetings, so we resorted to working from home or teaching from home. So we've got some phenomenal resources. One of them is the Scout South Africa Wiki webpage, where programs were shared for all 4 branches, the 4 branches being once again the meerkats, cubs, scouts, and rovers. These are the age-appropriate ones. We spent quite a lot of time doing virtual meetings. So there were a lot of Zoom meetings. We used Discord quite successfully, and it doesn't replace the face-to-face, but it gave the kids something to long for and look forward to, be it a Friday night Zoom session or a Saturday morning Zoom session. We did have some national events which were run virtually as well. We had a virtual cub camp, we've had a virtual meerkat camp. It's obviously not the same, but at least they get to participate and do things. So we ran some national activities as well. The national activities were more geared at the adults. Initially, we started with a virtual campfire chat every day of the week, including Saturdays and Sundays, and we've filtered that down to currently every Thursday night. We have a virtual campfire chat aimed more at the adults, keeping them together, having some interaction, and on the odd occasion, we did invite the senior scouts to participate. The cubs and meerkats made thank you cards for the essential services, which we then sent through to the essential services. The rovers had virtual skills building sessions, and like I already mentioned, we've had the cub and meerkat camps and national fun days. So we also had some virtual events to inspire and empower members and build their physical and mental wellness. One of them that I need to mention on there that we initiated or took part in was the Hike to Mahikeng. So where did the Hike to Mahikeng come from? What is it? Our founder, Lord Robert Baden-Powell, travelled 1,230 kilometres from the Cape Town province to Mahikeng. Then, whilst in lockdown during the siege of Mahikeng, the seed of scouting was planted. So Scout South Africa challenged all meerkats, cubs, scouts and rovers, adults and parents to get up and move and step into BP's footsteps by virtually taking part and making the distance. So we encouraged all members to approximately hike 20 kilometers over a time period under level 2 lockdown. And then anybody that participated would get the badge that you see reflected on the right, and then they would get a certificate. So the groups would combine the distances that the youth members used as well as the parents, and that encouraged people to get out under lockdown level 2. So this resulted in sharing of stories of hope and service to inspire and empower members. Another interesting factor that came up that was initiated was the COVID badge for scouting. And this was to educate and empower children and the youth as schools were about to reopen. So what did it mean and what did it entail? First of all, by educating the kids and offering this badge that they can wear on the uniform, the youth stepped up as leaders and role models. So even at a school, when they went back, or if the potential was to go back, or if they had meetings virtually, they were able to actually show their peers or tell them how to do stuff. So it ranged from explaining the terms of lockdown and social distancing and quarantine to demonstrating how to wear a mask. Or for the very young ones, it was even how do you cough or sneeze into an elbow or a handkerchief. The older ones had to explain the definition of the virus, the symptoms, the infections. So it got quite involved depending on the level of, or the age group of the kids that were involved. And also, once again, it contributed to the mental and physical well-being of members and their families. So we also got involved in humanitarian aid. So we had an international partnership of approximately, and this led to approximately 300 families in the rural Mpumalanga receiving food parcels to their doorstep. In the Western Cape, scouting and schools, the interns distributed food vouchers to the local townships. In the Free State, University Rovers handed out parcels to stranded students. Closer to home in Gauteng, we had not only Gauteng, it was throughout South Africa, but also we had local partnerships with other NGOs, and specifically in Gauteng, the Rovers got involved in packing approximately 20,000 food parcels with Africa to Kun. These were then distributed by Africa to Kun. We only got involved in the actual packaging and packing of them. We had food and clothing drives in townships around the country, led by the Rovers and Scout crews, where they were handing out food and clothing. We then also made up jars of hope, and this contributed approximately 15,000 warm meals to people in South Africa. And this comes from the fact that every year Scouts around the country honor our late patron Nelson Mandela by giving at least 67 minutes of their time for Mandela Day on the 18th of July. And this year under lockdown, it presented a bit of a problem, so because of the social distancing. So we decided to make up jars of hope, and these were then collected at a central collection point and then distributed by the necessary channels. The Rovers and the adults in Gauteng and the Western Cape provided essential services to the elderly and vulnerable, and this would include purchasing groceries, delivering the groceries to the elderly or vulnerable, collecting chronic medication at, for example, a Dischem and dropping it off. And then Scouters in KZN made over 800 masks for nurses in local clinics. The Scout South Africa also focuses on the Sustainable Development Goals, and we choose 4 a year. So this year, for 2020, Scout South Africa chose the SDG 5, which is gender equality, 13, which is the climate action, 14, life below water, and 15, life on land. That gives the children and young adults enough to focus on and enough to work with, as opposed to overloading them with all of them, so we do 4 a year. in the local dens, packs, troops and crews, incorporated these SDGs into their weekly and national meetings, as well as their fun events. We started the Water Champ Challenge, which is an interest badge for the children, and that promoted and addressed various factors. So over and above that, we also had other badges. We've got a Food for Life badge, we've got a recycling badge, the Naturalist, World Scout Environment. And all of these focus on the various SDGs, and the kids can work on it in their own time to earn these badges that they can wear on their sleeves. So WASM, which is just launched the Earth Tribe, and that's an initiative that unites young people globally to take environmental actions and develop key competencies and become environmental leaders. And as we come out of lockdown, and I'll say that with a pinch of salt, so we're still at level 1, but Scout South Africa has decided to launch in November. So the requirement, the aim there is to mobilize 10,000 youth to join the challenge from November onwards. So that also gives them something to work towards as we come out of lockdown. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, what we've tried to get involved in and how we've tried to tackle environmental challenges and keeping youth and adults positive. And hopefully we see the level 1 lockdown drop soon and we can get back to full scouting. But at this stage, we have started face-to-face scouting again. We operate under strict COVID protocols, but the kids are super enthusiastic to actually be able to have face-to-face meetings again. And with that, I also thank you for listening to my part and learning a bit about Scout South Africa.
I did have a question quickly, Martin, about the eco bricks that the Scouts sometimes make. I understand that had to be a bit disrupted now during COVID.
Yes, so at this stage, normally we do eco bricks. We encourage all the children to make up the eco bricks. So there was a bit of uncertainty initially with how long the COVID virus would last on the plastic. And we didn't really want the youth touching the plastic or actually collecting it to make the eco bricks. So it is definitely an initiative that will take place again as soon as things settle down a bit more.
Thanks, Martin. It's good to hear, because I know that's been a concern amongst the UNEP campaign about the spread of the virus through waste. So it's good to hear that how that impacted the activities of the Scouts. Just a reminder, everyone, if you have any questions for either Matthew or Martin, you can send those through in the chat. We have some comments coming through from Kloshka that says, thank you for the video link, Matthew. Great work and fantastic work, Matt and Martin. And just a note that it's very encouraging to hear all the work that's been happening from both Scouts and WESSA during this time. I think it's quite easy for everyone to get a bit discouraged during the pandemic, and while everyone is socially distancing, and it's hard to stay positive sometimes. So I think it's great to hear about the optimistic things that are happening, and all the kind of humanitarian aid and the educational programs taking place. Okay, I see we have another comment from Alisa that says, thank you, Matthew and Martin, you're both doing amazing work. I see there's another comment from Birgit that says, wonderful work, thank you for the presentation. I don't see any other questions so far. If anyone has any, please feel free to still send those in. Otherwise, I think you both did such a wonderful job presenting that people don't seem to have any questions. At this point, I'm just going to open it up for any other discussions. Matthew and Martin, is there anything you'd like to add or comment on?
From my side, not at this stage.
No, I just wanted to say to Martin how impressive the work that Scouts are doing is. It's amazing to think that you have such a big reach across the country, and I think your ability to pivot in what was a very tough time for your organization as much for my organization was amazing, and I think that you really do have to take some credit for what Scouts have done over over this last period. So really fantastic work. Thank you for sharing.
If it wasn't for all our leaders, we wouldn't be sitting in the situation we're in. So it's a pat on the shoulder to all the leaders that volunteer their time. But absolutely, thank you.
Thanks, Matthew and Martin. There was another comment from Haley that says, thank you both for the essential work you do and for the youth. And there's a question that says, any chance the recording will be shared? Unfortunately, I had to join late. Yes, the sessions are recorded and they will be uploaded to our YouTube page and our website. You will receive an email with the link once it's been uploaded. And to go along with that, if anyone has any questions after today, or you're struck by by an important question later, you're welcome to email that to us and we can pass it on to Matthew and Martin. At this time, I don't see any other questions in the chat. So for now, I think we can close it here today and give everyone's internet a well-earned rest. So just on behalf of SST and the joint campaign that we're running, I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us today. And a special thank you to Matthew and to Martin for all the incredible work that both your organizations are doing and for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us and present for us today and spread the amazing work that's happening. And then just there's a message from Matthew in the chat that says, thank you for the great platform and for the work that's being done. Thanks, everyone. I think we can end it here. You should receive an email with the link to the recording and to the presentation once they've been uploaded. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.